welcome us every week. You welcome us every day. You don't need a welcome service for this, but on this special Sabbath, in this special worship service, would it be that you would draw near to us? Would you open our minds and our hearts? In the name of Jesus, amen. We like hypothetical situations. It's just hypothetical, completely removes the personal obligation. We're just talking hypothetical, meaning it's just a what if, all right? We like it. We do well at those because it removes the personal obligation or any sense of response that we have to have. A preacher caught on to this one day talking to one of his members, a farmer. When he asked the farmer, he said, farmer, listen, let's say you had 100 pigs. Would you be willing to give 25 of those pigs to Jesus? Well, the farmer said, absolutely. Hypothetically speaking, if I had 25 or 100 pigs, I would be happy to give 25 of them to Jesus. The preacher pushing the issue said, listen, farmer, what if you had 50? Would you give 15 pigs to Jesus? The farmer said, there is no question in my mind. If I had 50 pigs, I'd give 15 of them to Jesus. The preacher said, listen, what if you had 20 pigs? If you had 20 pigs, would you give 10 of them to Jesus? If I had 20 pigs, said the farmer, and I would give 10 of them to Jesus, of course. And then the preacher said, listen, if you had 2 pigs, would you give 1 of them to Jesus? Oh, come on, said the farmer. That's not fair. I only have 2 pigs. Come on. As soon as it becomes real life, it's not fun anymore. Hypothetically speaking, we would give half. We would be generous to Jesus. But now you're talking about my 2 pigs? I can't give 1 of them to Jesus. If I had 100, I'd give 25, but not 1. The story we're about to embark into is one that I believe for most of us has been a hypothetical situation. Hypothetically speaking, that's a great story. But not if it's my story. And that's where we want to go today. This story, come on, thetop10s.com places this narrative, this Bible story, as the number 6 overall most popular Bible story in the world. All right, number 1, of course, is the crucifixion. Number 2, David and Goliath. Come on, how are you going to compete with that? Number 3, the Christmas story, the Nativity. Number 4, we've got Jonah and the whale. Number 5 comes in at Adam and Eve. Number 6, Daniel and the lion's den. Got your Bibles? We're going to go to Daniel chapter 6. Let me set up the context for you here, some of which is just hinted at in Daniel chapter 6, but most of it is not. Here's how it rolled. All right, you know, Nebuchadnezzar, the great founding king of Babylon, had a son Nabonidus. Nabonidus had a son Belshazzar. We don't hear much of Nabonidus because Nabonidus toured the kingdom trying to keep peace, trying to keep it together. And so his son Belshazzar was really the reigning monarch that stayed in Babylon. What Nabonidus did when the Medes and the Persians began to began to snip away at the fringes of the kingdom, and it became clear that there was not a lot that was going to stop them. Nabonidus went about and gathered all of the gods from the temples in the major cities of the Babylonian Empire and took them to Babylon. His idea was that he was going to fortify Babylon with the gods from all around the empire, because gods would have to protect themselves, and in protecting themselves, they would have to protect the city. Right? Gods would, it's a very narcissistic God that you have. You know, he'll let the rest of the kingdom go, but when it comes to, he'll have to defend himself. So Nabonidus had gathered all of these gods and put them into Babylon. Well, when the Medes and the Persians were not stopped, and that fateful night when Belshazzar lost his life after the handwriting on the wall, Babylon was taken over by the Medes and the Persians. Darius the Mede became the king of Babylon. He wasn't the king of the Medes and the Persians, he was just the king of Babylon. What he had to do, though, was begin to reorganize the political and the religious structure. Now the Medes and the Persians didn't force you to worship their gods. They were very religious liberty focused, and their politics were rather good too. Generally, they would even leave a reigning monarch as long as he was willing to be subservient. He could stay in his little kingdom. But obviously, Belshazzar was not one of those. Darius comes in. He sets up 120 administrators, satraps, rulers, kind of regional rulers. So he reorganizes the political scene. You know, just off of a guess, that caused some political uncertainty and turmoil. Now, in the religious world, all of these gods had been collected from the temples around the empire and put into Babylon. There was a lot of people upset. They were upset that they were worshiping at an empty temple. There was no God in their temple. It was in Babylon. And so Darius had to return all of these gods, and that took time. Logistically, obviously, there was not a 2-day overnight mailing. And so logistically, they had to move these gods, but also ceremonially, there had to be a ceremony of departure from Babylon, a ceremony along the way, a ceremony when they got there. All of the ceremonies and the logistics meant that this took some time. So during this time of political and religious upheaval, Satan, lurking in the shadows, pounces. That's where we get our story. This was not normal time. There was a bunch of religious and political turmoil. And so in this time of turmoil comes this suggestion from some of the leaders, some of the 120 leaders that had been appointed. Now, Daniel was one of the foremost, but he was not included in this for obvious reasons. What happens? You got your Bible, Daniel chapter 6. Daniel chapter 6 and verse, let's go to 4. We'll put it on the screen if you don't have it already. But reading from your own Bible and marking it up or your journal obviously is the best. Now, verse 4. At this, the administrators, the satraps, tried to find grounds for charges against Daniel. They came to the king with this idea. Hey, listen, king, why don't we do an executive order for 30 days? We're not talking about something permanent here because it would be against what the Medes and the Persians were all about. The king spoke for the gods but was not one of the gods. And so when they come to him, they say, why don't we have for 30 days a decree where nobody worships anything except for you? Because of the religious turmoil, because of the political turmoil, let's do an executive order that for 30 days, it's just a temporary fix the problem going on in our kingdom. Brilliant idea, right? You're the king. You've just established. There's a bunch of turmoil, unrest. You come up with this idea. Let's do a 30-day, a temporary order that will bring everybody together in unity. Come on, beloved. If you are not tracking in the world we live in, I don't know what to tell you more. This is exactly a mirror of the world we live in. Political and religious uncertainty and turmoil. It looks like that's what we've got to fix. Let's fix the religious turmoil. Let's fix the political turmoil. That's a smokescreen. That's a facade. Behind the scenes, the devil is lurking and saying, I just need to stir the pot, get everything messy, and then come up with a solution. And that's what happens here. They offer to Darius, look, Darius, let's fix this with a 30-day decree that nobody can worship anything. Let's just clear the deck. All come together for 30 days. It sounded good. Politically, it sounded good. Religiously, fine. Let's just take a pause. Well, the administrators, the satraps, tried to find grounds for charges against Daniel. They knew he wouldn't pass this test. Just the fact that they knew speaks volumes. But they were to bring charges in his conduct of government affairs, but they were unable to do so. They could find no corruption in him. Isn't that a breath of fresh air? A politician with no corruption? Because he was trustworthy, neither corrupt nor negligent. He was faithful to his duties. Verse 5, finally these men said, come on, we've got to come up. We'll never find any basis for charges against this man Daniel unless it has something to do with the law of his God. Ah, beloved, do not miss that. That line right there is not incidental, it's not accidental, it's intentional. This is now introducing the real battle behind the scenes. You thought it was just some political turmoil because of the new government. You thought it was some religious turmoil because the gods had all been taken to Babylon. Ha, ha, ha. The devil's got you. If your eyes are on the religious or the political turmoil, you are set up. Behind the scene, the devil is saying, I'm just stirring when the dust is all flying, then I'm gonna really pounce. This is behind the scenes. It really had to do with the law of God. So what happens? When Daniel learned of the decree, verse 10, when Daniel learned of the decree had been published, he went home to his upstairs room where the windows opened toward Jerusalem. 3 times a day, he got down on his knees and prayed, giving thanks to his God just as he had done before. Here's a man. Daniel knew that the decree had been signed, but he neither placed himself unnecessarily in harm's way, nor did he abandon his duty because of the threat of harm. He did just as he had done before. He was faithful. What we are now is what we will be in the crisis, beloved. The final generation often thinks of themselves as one who will prepare and pull out the stops when it all comes together. But who we are today, who you are today, is who you will be in a crisis. Just as he had done before. For decades, Daniel had prayed and labored 3 times a day. His concern in this moment, as the decree, death lingered over his head. Not just a little discomfort, not a loss of job, not a loss of position, not a loss of title, not a loss of comfort. He would lose his life. But what Daniel became concerned with was not his own life, but his faithfulness to God. I hope we get this. If you are your number one concern, if your well-being is your number one concern, when the crisis comes, your number one concern will remain yourself. Which means, whatever I have to do to spare myself, you will do. No, come on, I am going to be faithful. If your most important asset is yourself, you will guard it with whatever it takes. Daniel's number one asset, his number one concern was not his life, but his faithfulness to God. The testimony that would be born from his life. Will he remain faithful? Is he right with his God? That became his number one concern. And death, or rather the loss of his life itself, was subject to his faithfulness. Well, they caught him, and they went back to the king, verse 12. All right, king, we've got somebody. They went to the king and spoke to him about his royal decree. Did you not publish? They want to make sure that it's clear. A decree that during the next 30 days, anyone who prays to any god or human being except you, your majesty, would be thrown into the lion's den. Did you not so declare? The king answered, the decree stands in accordance with the law of the Medes and the Persians, which cannot be repealed. And now you see the conflict behind the scenes. While the devil stirs the political unrest and the religious uncertainty, behind the scenes is really the conflict between the law of God and a law made up just days earlier. This is the final crisis, beloved. You read the book of Revelation. You follow the rest of this book, Daniel, and you will be absolutely convinced. It is cogent that the conflict, the great final conflict, is between the law of God and a law that will be just days old. And the days-old law will be defended as if it cannot be altered, while the one that has been for an eternity past and will continue for an eternity future will be accused that that one needs to change. What gall. Well, the laws of the Medes and the Persians could not be altered, and that became the rub. There were two laws, both which could not be altered. So the ultimate persuader is you're gonna have to give your life then. And these guys knew that. The devil knew that as he plays out this drama. Well, Darius happened to like Daniel. He labored all night. Is there any way we can save him? Is there any loophole in the law? No doubt he gathered the lawyers. Let's go. Round table it up. Let's find a way to deliver Daniel. But there was none. It was watertight. And so reluctantly the king had Daniel placed in the lion's den. He couldn't sleep. But at the dawn, he had to wait till the first dawn of light. Oh, there's something there. He had to wait till the first dawn of light. And then he ran to the tomb, the would-be tomb. He ran to that den and had the stone rolled back. Are you there? Daniel, are you there? Is the God that you have so faithfully served, is he faithful to you? Daniel's cry is in verse 22. My God, O King, live forever. My God sent his angel, and he shut the mouths of the lions. They have not hurt me because I have been found innocent in his sight, nor have I ever done any wrong before you, your majesty. Oh, that cry was music to the ears of Darius. But there is more in this cry than it wasn't just, come on, not so quick. My God has sent his angel and he shut the mouths of lions. I know the picture that's in your mind. It's the same picture that's in my mind. Those by fabulous artists who paint this picture. Daniel, he's an older man now. He's looking up into the sunbeams of that morning light. And around him are lying these very docile, almost content lions. That's not at all what Daniel said. Daniel didn't say the angel came and domesticated the lions. These hangry, right, the hungry, angry lions, these hangry lions wanted to eat Daniel all night long. The angel didn't domesticate them. The angel shut their mouths. And so all night long, the angel held its hand over their mouths. But those lions must have paced, looking at Daniel, growling out of the sides of their... All night, Daniel had to face the lions. A time of trouble where his life was uncertain. He didn't know if he would make it till the morning. The lions stared him down the entire time. All night long, his prayer, oh God, may I be innocent in your sight. May I be found faithful. His preoccupation was not for his own life, but for his loyalty to his master. The story almost ends there. There's just a few more lines. The lines after this, the conspiracy theorists, right, that created this whole drama, they're thrown into the lion's den, finished off. That's how you know the angel did not domesticate these lions. The angel held its hand over their mouths. But all night, Daniel had to face them. That's where Daniel 6 ends, and then it jumps right into Daniel chapter 7. Now, I am convinced, absolutely, that Daniel chapter 6 was meant to bleed right into Daniel chapter 7. First of all, Daniel chapter 7 happens well before Daniel chapter 6. Daniel chapter 6 is about Darius, after the Medes and the Persians take over Babylon. Daniel chapter 7 happens when Belshazzar is still ruling in Babylon. Daniel intentionally reverses the order so that we read Daniel chapter 6 and it runs right into Daniel chapter 7. It's not chronological, but it's thematic. He wants to set it up. Look, this is what's going to take place. Let me tell you about Daniel chapter 7. Daniel chapter 7, Daniel has his first vision. Now, he's had to interpret the king's visions, but he has not, in Daniel, had a vision yet. This is his first vision, where he is given it's just to him. He sees the winds of strife, the stress on the earth. Come on. Political and religious unrest. And from that, there are 4 kingdoms, world-ruling kingdoms that mirror Daniel chapter 2's metals. There's Babylon, and then the Medes and the Persians, and then Greece, and then Rome. The 4 kingdoms in the symbols of beasts come up. Well, then that 4th kingdom has 10 horns. And that 4th kingdom is then divided into 10 smaller kingdoms. And then from among those 10 kingdoms comes up a little kingdom. Daniel 7 describes it as a little horn that's just mean. It's just a naughty little horn. And it comes and starts bossing everybody else around, and then takes out 3 that it doesn't like, that it's not getting along with, and begins to even speak against God. This little horn is out of control. Daniel chapter 7 and verse 25. Put it on the screen for you. That's this little horn power, will speak against even the Most High and oppress his holy people and try to change the set times and laws. Wait a minute. Daniel chapter 6. There was a bunch of unrest. And from that unrest, there was an attempt to contradict the law of God. The only place that they could find against Daniel was having to do with the law of his God. And there was a law that could not be changed that was set up against that law of God. Wait a minute. Now this little horn steps to the plate and seeks to change. How do you change a law? By making another law. A law that says differently. Daniel chapter 7 then is the prophetic vision of Daniel chapter 6, playing out the exact same scenario. So what does God do? Behind the scenes. Daniel chapter 7 is the behind the scenes of what Daniel chapter 6 is. So what does God do behind the scenes? Well, it's good news. Daniel chapter 7 and verse 9. As I looked, this is Daniel in his vision, thrones were set in place, and the Ancient of Days took his seat. His clothing was white, and it goes on to describe him, but hang on, it comes back. And the court was seated, and the books were open. In this time, when political unrest, religious turmoil, and this power steps to the plate and says, I've got a solution to this unrest. Let's do it. 30 days, let's come together and just do the same thing. It will unite us. It's a good idea. Except the law that they enact will directly contradict the law of God. And they'll say, we can't find anything against this generation, this final generation of faithful men and women. But when it comes to the law of their God, there's something there. In answer to that, God calls the court, the judgment, into session. Now, Daniel 7 uses this term, Ancient of Days. It's the only chapter in the Bible that uses this term. Nowhere else in the Bible will you find Ancient of Days. Ancient of Days is this picture, is this description of God being a forever ruler in the past and having forever rulership in the future. This is an eternal ruler. Why does he use this? Because he wants us to know that there will come a time when it appears that the powers on this planet are having their absolute sway. God, where are you? He says, listen, I am the Ancient of Days. I have always been and I will always be, even when you can't see me because of the mess, the strife, and the turmoil on the planet. Now, you want to know what a book is about in the Bible? You want to know what a passage is about? You look at the words that are repeated the most. And in Daniel chapter 7, the number one repeated word is dominion. Dominion, dominion. Who has dominion? These powers on earth or God? Dominion, dominion, dominion. The question, while it appears there's the struggle is between a liberal and a conservative, a Democrat and a Republican, you and me, behind the scenes, the real question is who has the dominion? Is it God with his eternal law? Satan is doing everything he can, striving for this dominion. Oh. Hans Lundell, in his book, Understanding the End Time Prophecies of the Bible, puts these words together. Daniel's narratives of religious loyalty to God's sacred law by a few faithful ones provide the essential types or prefigurations, that's the examples of the nature of the final crisis for God's people in the end of time. Do you catch what Hans Lundell is saying? He's saying Daniel chapter 6 is the exact story of what will happen to the final generation at the very end of time. Men and women will be called to be faithful to God. Oh, there will be a mess politically and religiously. It will be confusion. But they will be called to be faithful, faithful even unto death. And there will be a time that they will have to stare the lions down. They're not excluded from the suffering, but they pass through it faithful. What is God's response? He says, listen, I'm going to set up a pre-Advent judgment. That's Daniel chapter 6. Daniel chapter 6 presents Daniel as absolutely faithful, even before the crisis. Let me take you there. The 4 verses, I'll rapid fire them. Daniel chapter 6, verse 4. They could find no corruption in him because he was trustworthy, neither corrupt nor negligent. That was before the crisis. Who you are today is who you will be in the crisis. Daniel chapter 6, verse 10. 3 times a day he got down on his knees, he prayed, giving thanks to God, just as he had done before. This was who he was. Daniel chapter 6 and verse 20. Daniel, this is Darius calling him out. Servant of the living God, has your God whom you serve continually, even the king, knew that Daniel was faithful to his God. Has he been able to rescue you from the lions? And Daniel chapter 6, verse 22. Daniel's response, they have not hurt me because I was found innocent in his sight, nor have I done any wrong before you, your majesty. Daniel's response, God said, I'm going to have to, in order to settle this question of who has the authority on this planet, I'm going to have to take them through this crisis. The devil has set it up. God has not set up the crisis. The devil has set it up, but God has said, in order to establish that I have the authority, that this is my kingdom, I will have to take a group of people through that crisis, through that time of trouble, and they will be absolutely faithful. God knows it. Just like Darius knew it of Daniel. Just like the conspiracy theorists knew it of Daniel. God sets up this pre-Advent judgment not to judge us, not to establish that we are unworthy of his kingdom, but to prove that in fact we are worthy. Daniel chapter 7 says he gives judgment in favor of the saints, and that he actually gives his dominion to the saints, but he first must prove to all that is wrong and to hell itself that it's his dominion. The question often surfaces, can I have certainty in salvation? Can I be certain like Daniel? Absolutely, you can be certain. How can I be certain? How can I be certain that I am right before God? I'll ask you this question. Is there anything wrong with God right now between you and God? Well, not really. I mean, there's the one thing, then you're not right with God. But other people, that you're not right with God. Daniel knew he was right with God. He had a certainty of his salvation, beloved, because he had given everything up to God. You holding something, you're not right with God. I wish I could sugarcoat it and say, hey, why don't you take some time and work on it? But in the final generation, we're running out of time. We're running out of time, beloved. How can I be absolutely certain that I'm right with God? That's like asking me, are you absolutely 100% right with your wife? Well, there was that one thing I said, then you're not right with your wife. You know it. You know it in your heart of hearts. You know that there is something you're holding, something you've held, something you haven't given, and there is something that you must give, that you must surrender. Daniel chapter 3 and Daniel chapter 6 were both examples of faithful service to the world around them. Daniel chapter 3 and the three Hebrew worthies and Daniel chapter 6, both of them served their world, but they were not of the world. Both of them sent into a crisis. The question became the law of God. The law of God will be the final conflict at the very end of time. Great Controversy, that great volume that journeys through the Reformation and ends with the prophetic scenes of the end of time. It talks about this. Was the real struggle that Daniel had, was it with lions? No. And neither will ours. The greater question for Daniel was his faithfulness. Am I right with my God? Great Controversy, put the words on the screen. Though God's people will be surrounded by enemies who are bent upon their destruction, yet the anguish which they suffer is not a dread of persecution for truth's sake. Come on, the final generation doesn't worry about the persecution. That's God's business. He has to take care of the den of lions. What I want to know, their fear, says Great Controversy, is that every sin has not, is there a sin that has not been repented of? Is there one thing that I'm holding on to? That's the anguish. That's the question of the final generation. Not how will they suffer, or will they suffer, or what kind of persecution. It is irrelevant. Why? Because their primary asset, the most important thing to the final generation, is not their lives, but their faithfulness. We have made our lives the most important asset, the most important aspect. And so when we talk about persecution, time of trouble, what's going to happen? Am I going to be hungry? I'd better gather food. Am I going to be left without a home? I'd better move to where they can't find me. And all the while, the most important asset becomes our own selves and not the glory of God. So what's the most important asset to you? Daniel's example to the final generation is that their most important asset will be the faithfulness to God. Oh God, is there one thing today that is keeping us from being completely, where I can be innocent before I can have the absolute assurance of eternity with you? Will God shut the mouths of lions for you? Yeah. He will shut the mouths of lions. That doesn't mean you won't have a night of suffering, a time of trouble. That doesn't mean there won't be a time where you feel they are attacking you. Those lions, the hot breath of the lion looking into your face. Great Controversy continues. This is a continuation of what we just read. Will the Lord forget his people in this trying hour? A bunch of rhetorical questions. Did he forget faithful Noah? Nope. Did he forget Lot when the fire came down from heaven? Nope. Did he forget Joseph surrounded by idolaters in Egypt? Nope. Did he forget Elijah when the oath of Jezebel threatened him with the same fate of the prophets of Baal? Nope. Did he forget the three worthies in the fiery furnace? Nope. Did he forget Daniel in the den of lions? Nope. Will he forget Michael? Nope. Hallelujah. Will he forget you? Nope. He will send his angel. He won't forget you, but you must forget yourself. 18 years ago, I bought a car, a brand new car, Honda Pilot. I was single and working full time. I had a little extra. So I went down and bought a new car. I figured it would be the only new car I'd ever buy, and that's fine. I'm fine with that. I bought this, though, and I thought about my future. I thought, well, what would my future wife want? Yeah, so I picked it out. Picked a color I thought maybe she'd like. Well, my kids, we're going to need some extra seat. That third row in the Honda Pilot, I don't know how many kids we're going to have. Apparently it's 2. I don't know though at this point. So I buy the car. And 18 years ago. Well, as of recently, it's not been acting itself, and it's threatened to leave me hanging a time or two. So we put it up for sale. We sold it just a week ago. We had to clean it out, 18 years of stuff getting hidden around in the crevices and cracks of a car. We're cleaning it out. Melanie helped me, and we're digging through it. And we have a little trash bag. And I walk by the trash bag, and I see on the top of the trash is this crumpled cardboard card. And I recognize that kind of looks like a gift card. It's not a Visa gift card or any card I'd recognize. It's a cardboard one, not the plastic one. It's all crumpled and in the garbage now, but I pull it out. Hey, I don't know what, I want to just look this up. I stuff it in my pocket, and later that night, I'm emptying out my pockets, and I pull out this crumpled card. It had been given to us as a wedding present 10 years ago. All right, we've been married a decade. 10 years, this card had just got lost somewhere in the car. I type in the website, though. Said, if you have a number, you enter your number. I read the number on the crumpled cardboard. Pops up. You ready to order? Sure. You pick your stuff. Pick my stuff. Hit purchase. Thank you for your purchase. It's on its way. Well, hot dog. 10 years, and this crumpled piece of cardboard still works. 10 years. And it still is valuable. And I don't care if it's 1,000 years. Daniel chapter 6 still speaks to the final generation. Those who will be found completely faithful before God. We will not hold anything back, God. We will everything. They will be a people of prayer, just like Daniel, praying 3 times a day. Well, I can't do that. Yes, you can. If your life depended on it, you could do anything, and your life depends on it. Fall on your knees. How did Daniel remain innocent before God? He remained innocent before God because the only clue we have is that he prayed. How do you deal with those things that are besetting you, those sins which so easily beset you, that little thing that's so hard to give up, the thing you keep going back to, the temper you keep losing and finding, apparently? How do you deal with that? You go to your knees, and you stay there, decade after decade, 3 times a day. And in the crisis, you will be found innocent, and your salvation will be sure. I've given my loyalties to a lot of little things, stupid things. It's been part of the mess on this planet. Our worship team's going to come up, join me here, but I wonder if there is someone or someone's here who has felt like me, I need to take a stand for Jesus. There's some things that have consumed me, that have stole my loyalties. I'm not certain of my salvation because I know there are little things right now. And so I just wonder. I wonder if you would join me today in taking a stand right here where you're at in recommitting your loyalties to the God of heaven, the God of Daniel chapter 6, and Daniel chapter 7. Is there anyone who would just stand here with me and say, I God, I am recommitting myself to you. I want to give you my undivided loyalties. I know there's something in my heart right now. I'm not trying to be fake here. There's something in my heart that you and I, God, are going to have to talk about this afternoon. I want to be done with it. But let's sing this stanza.
On Jordan's stormy banks I stand and cast a wishful eye to Canaan's fair and happy land where my possessions lie. I am bound for the promised land. I am bound for the promised land. Oh, who will come and go with me? I am bound for the promised land.
I asked him for another moment. In first service, we made the invitation. There might be someone here that has never made the public commitment of loyalty to God. We do it through baptism in the Christian faith. But it's a public commitment. You've never taken that commitment, or you have taken that commitment. You have been loyal to God, and then you have walked away. And today you know that you have walked away from your loyalties to God, but you need to be back. Maybe it's again, or maybe it's for the first time. In first service, there was a young man right here in the back on the left. He grew up in this community. Graduated from high school in the Loveland Public High School. Walked away from God, moved away, and moved back. And in the last couple of months, God has weighed heavy on his heart. You've got to make a decision for me. You're part of the final generation. You're part of a people that will set the example to the world of faithfulness to me. And he sat in the back, and when we made this invitation, he walked up to the front for the first time to declare his loyalties to the God of heaven. It was powerful. But I want to invite you. Maybe it's the first time, or maybe you have walked away from your loyalties to the God of heaven, and you know you are not living the life of Daniel, and you need to come back. I don't know, it may be rebaptism, or it may just be a public statement of coming to the front right now, but I would invite you. I'm going to be right here while we sing these next two stanzas. If that's your decision and you know you need to make it, would you join me here?
For all those wide extended plains of one eternal day, there Christ the Son forever reigns and scatters the night away. I am bound for the promised land. I am bound for the promised land. Oh, who will come and go with me? I am bound for the promised land. When shall I reach that happy place and be forever blessed? When shall I see my Father's face and in his kingdom rest? I am bound for the promised land. I am bound for the promised land. Oh, who will come and go with me? I am bound for the promised land.
Oh, beloved, don't be missing. Now may the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord make his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. May the Lord turn his face towards you and give you peace, like Daniel, until we meet again in worship. Amen.